everyone, I'm Steve Saunders from Silver Linings, and this is Cloud9. And with me today, I have Mattias Fridström from Arelion. And Mattias, you're VP and Chief Evangelist there. And I think we used to know your company by another name, another brand. It used to be Telia. Is that right?
Yeah, you're right. We used to be called Telia Carrier, but then we were sold 2.5 years ago. So now, since 2.5 years, we are called Arelion, and we're still the same company, still doing the same stuff, but with new owners. So that's why we have changed the name.
Well, it's a cool name, but are you really doing the same stuff? Because I feel like the world has gone through some permutations in the last few years, and then what got us there before may not get us to where we need to go in the future. How has your business changed, particularly in light of the growth of things like hyperscaler cloud service and new needs from your customers?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I would say every year is different from the year before. Things are changing all the time. I think the biggest trend we see out there with the cloud coming in, and pretty much everyone wants to use the cloud. Hyperscalers are the cloud sometimes, and they want to use the cloud. So obviously, a big change is that our customers are driving much more traffic towards certain destinations instead of connecting themselves to their own servers in their own basement. They're using the cloud now. So there's a lot of things that's changed. The public internet is still out there, but the public internet themselves becomes more popular to be used for enterprise services as well. So I think there is a lot of change going on out there. So you're absolutely right, we're not the same company we used to be before.
But net of net, pun intended, has the cloud evolution or revolution, if you will, has it been good for business for you?
I think it's really been good for business for us. More traffic is always good for a carrier like us, so that's of course good. But I think also the fact that companies are now more aware of where they store the data and how to store their data and what type of traffic that needs to be in the cloud and what shouldn't be in the cloud. I think they more and more understand that it's better to talk to their operators to see what they can do for them. And for us, if we can guide customers with what type of data should be in the cloud and where in the cloud they should be and so on, I think that's all good for us. If we become a big portion of that ecosystem, I think that's the benefit for everyone in the ecosystem.
Well, are you still number one in terms of having your IP backbone? Because I know that
We're
was.
absolutely no, we're absolutely number one. We're actually further ahead than we've ever been before in the internet backbone ranking. The one that can produce most of the public internet to the general audience, being enterprises, being ISPs, being operators. So that's a big portion of who we are. That's important for us. But of course, there are other things enterprise and operators want. But I would say the internet backbone is what we're mostly famous for, and that's still something we focus a lot on.
When you're working, partnering with, or selling to a cloud hyperscaler, what is their need for your service? Is it purely geographical, or is it sometimes capacity? And do you see the definition of that relationship changing, say, over the next 2 or 3 years? Do you think they're going to start trying to build more of their own network and be less reliant on yours, or is that a peaceable kingdom right now?
No, I know. I think that's a good question, and it's absolutely sure that some of them will build more of their own networks, buying fibers and build their networks. They have so much traffic, so it makes no sense really to use an operator to transport that traffic. But of course, they want to be everywhere on the globe, and they will never build their networks like an operator will build their networks around. So there will always be portions in our network where their needs will be much better in our network than them building that themselves. So I would say uh, we have a good relationship with the hyperscalers. We are a portion of their global networks. If that's going to change, I don't think so. I think they are interested in absolutely the largest stretches between the major cities. That's where they will build themselves. But then, of course, all of them have products that they need to come out on the public internet with, and that's where we come in, as well. We can serve them with the access to the internet so that people can use Amazon.com, people can use Microsoft services, and so on. So, of course, we have many touch points with them.
I understand. And let's talk about network architecture for a second, because the practice at the moment is to put the data storage and processors end up in data centers, and some of these are the size of small towns at this point. China's building a data center in Mongolia, which is about the size of Detroit. Um, but as that's not, if I put on my hat as a data whisperer and ask the data where it wants to go. I say, where do you want to be? The data doesn't want to be in a data center. The data wants to be out by the end edges of the network. And in that data center universe, you're starting to see some of that distribution with so-called micro data centers, which are the size of a house. They're not particularly small. Do you think that that's going to, as we get things like quantum computing and different types of storage technology, do you see that distribution of data becoming exponential, as it were? And then what happens to the data centers? They just get used as hockey rinks and paintball arenas, put the homeless in them, stuff like that?
Yeah, no, yeah, maybe they will. No, I think there is room for both. I'm pretty sure there will be much more micro data centers out at the edge. There is some traffic that doesn't need to go back to a central data center to be computed and so on. That data should just be stored at the edge. It could be a movie that everyone wants to see in a city. It would be stupid to have that movie centrally in Frankfurt or in Detroit or centrally. That should be out there. So absolutely, some data should be out there. But of course, there should be data in the bigger data centers, and of course, with AI coming in, you need enormous data centers to start to use the data in a smart way and the generative way of AI. Then absolutely, you will need these enormous data centers to start to do the real computing and the real stuff there. So a combination of both will absolutely be there, which is of course good for a carrier like us because we can transport that traffic back and forth.
And what's happening in the actual network, in the pipes, as the politicians like to call them? What's happening on the fiber connections? I mean, obviously, DWDM essentially let us, break the laws of time and space by exceeding the speed of light, by dividing traffic up and sending it over multiple different light paths. So that was a nice trick. Everybody got excited about that, obviously. But are there things happening now? I hear interesting things about free space optics. I mean, I used to write about that in the early 90s. It's now a million times faster than it was back then. Is that something which you think is relevant to your business now? Would you start looking at those for things like gigabit and potentially even terabit links?
Yeah, we absolutely look at every technology that's coming out there. There's tons of things coming out. I think the traditional DVDM systems that you talked about have kind of reached their limit on how much they can transport per fiber pair. It's called the Shannon's limit, and I think we're right about that edge right now. But of course, there are many ways of doing this. You can actually shrink the size of the gear and less power hungry, and therefore equip more fiber pairs and so on. But I think the whole industry is at a point right now where we need to look at new ways of doing this. I'm pretty sure more fibers will be needed because the current systems can't be upgraded anymore. 10 years ago, you could always upgrade a system to the next generation and you got twice as much capacity for half the price. That's not happening anymore. So now we need to find new ways. What you talk about, free space, and we hear stuff around quantum internet, blah, blah, blah. And I think, yeah, those are years away. But I think there are still developments happening. But I think one of the coolest thing that's going on right now is this 400ZR technology, the ZR technology where you practically remove the DVDM layer in between and you shoot traffic from router to router. You embed the lasers in the routers and thereby just completely bypass the component in the middle. And that's a fantastic way for carriers like us to, yeah, keep up the same traffic but at 20% of the cost.
Yeah, it's an amazing breakthrough, isn't it? We've been talking to Juniper and Sienna and some other people. So you're using that already?
Absolutely, absolutely. We're going to be, I don't think anyone really using it apart from the hyperscalers big time right now. We are already using it, but I would say 2024, that's when we're going to roll it out big time.
But we have to look further, don't we? Beyond, I mean, in America, people really don't want to look beyond the next quarter and sometimes the next financial year. I mean, you're down the road from Ericsson, which has been doing this stuff for a century and a half. We got to look further now, don't we? Don't you think? Because I feel like that's what has caught out the US in terms of communications infrastructure, and that's why there isn't an incumbent systems vendor here anymore. Is because they didn't look far enough out. But if I go to China, where Huawei spending 25 billion a year, what are they spending it on? I mean, they're not spending it on just technologies for next year. I mean, what are they working on?
Yeah, no, you're right. There is a lot of R&D that needs to be done. I think you have some American vendors that's really good at this as well. That's looking way beyond. But I think the biggest problem we have in the world right now is the lack of fiber. Fiber is always going to be, in the end, the most important thing. We can talk about satellites and we can talk about other stuff, but at the end of the day, fiber, there's nothing that can be compared to fiber. Satellites are perfect for rural areas in Canada, but if you really want to do some, you need fibers, and I think that's where both Europe and US have lacked in terms of building new infrastructure for years and years. And right now it is expensive to lay a new cable, and but it just has to be done. I know there are government fundings on both in US and in Europe, but it needs to be more because
I
there's a huge
couldn't.
lack of fiber right now.
We really agree. I mean, the BEADS Act in North America, and North America communications infrastructure is terrible. I mean, I think it's number 12 for fixed broadband and number 22 or something for mobile. And this is a country which has been the richest GDP in the world for 60 years. So that's unacceptable. And now the government's put $53 billion towards building fiber infrastructure, which is less than 1/2 of 1% of what we've spent fighting wars over the last 20 years. So add a zero. Hell, add two. I mean, that's the future, really. I mean, communications infrastructure is the most important infrastructure there is now, in my opinion. It's not communications infrastructure; it's world infrastructure. And you guys are number one, so this is privilege. That's awesome. Yeah, so this is really cool. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today. Before I go, any news from Arelion this year? Any big developments that you want to share with our audience?
No, I think the expansion of our network. We don't really launch new products, but we are expanding our network. We're going much more into Mexico. There is a huge market in Mexico that we're going to go into. We're just launching a new pop in Portugal, which there is a lot of traffic coming from southern part of US and Florida region and South America coming to Europe that way. So I would say, that's the way for us to grow. That's the way for us to support our customers much better, being in more places. I'm pretty sure South America and Africa will be populated with more cables and things going forward. I think the world needs to be global, even though we have a geopolitical turmoil at the moment. But I think, at the end of the day, global is the only way to go. And for us, that just means more networks in more countries, and that's it.
That's good for business. Yeah, we need to enable data equality. That's what our industry is focused on, and you guys are at the forefront of that. So it's really nice to talk to you. Congratulations on the rebranding. I know that's not new for you guys, but it's somewhat new for me, and it's great to hear that in under whatever banner you're flying at the moment, that things are going so well. So you work for a great company, and I appreciate you sharing your thoughts with our audience today, Mattias. Thank you.
No, absolutely. It's fun to be here. So thanks for having me.